The courtroom fell silent. Maya Johnson stood in the witness box, her hands trembling as she held a faded photograph. Across the room, her husband of 12 years sat in a tailored Italian suit worth more than her monthly rent. His new girlfriend, blonde, 26, fresh out of paralegal school, sat directly behind him, fingers interlocked with his beneath the wooden barrier. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Johnson, do you understand the accusations your husband has brought against you?" Maya's throat tightened. Charles had accused her of financial manipulation, emotional abuse. He claimed she had trapped him in the marriage, that she had stolen from their joint accounts, the same accounts she had filled alone for 7 years while he studied, the same accounts that paid for his bar exam, his suits, his first office. Charles smiled at her from across the room. That smile she once loved. The smile she had worked double shifts to protect. Now it looked different. Now it looked like victory. He thought he had already won. He had no idea what she was about to reveal. Welcome to Morel Folktales. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from today. We want to know, are you watching from Lagos, London, New York, Texas? Let us know. Now settle in, because this story is about to take you somewhere you won't expect. 6 months earlier, Maya stood at the kitchen counter of their 4-bedroom home in Westfield Heights, slicing vegetables for dinner. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Charles had been coming home late for months now. Always a case. Always a client dinner. Always something. She didn't question it anymore. 12 years of marriage had taught her when to speak and when to swallow. The front door opened. Charles walked in, briefcase in hand, phone pressed to his ear. He didn't look at her. "Yeah, I'll have the documents ready by Friday. Tell Davidson we're moving forward with the acquisition." He laughed at something the person on the other end said. Maya watched him. His shoes were new. Italian leather. She hadn't bought them. His tie was different too. Silk. A pattern she didn't recognize. He ended the call and finally looked at her. "Dinner ready?" "Almost." He nodded, loosening his tie. "I need to talk to you about something." Maya set down the knife. Something in his voice made her stomach drop. Charles sat at the dining table. He didn't invite her to sit. He just started talking. "I've been thinking about us. About where we are. About where I'm going." Maya felt her heart slow down. "I've built something, Maya. Something real. Something important. And I need to be honest with you." He looked at her. No warmth. No guilt. Just cold calculation. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air. Maya didn't move. "I've already filed the paperwork. My attorney will be in touch with you tomorrow. I'm asking for the house, the investment accounts, and the car. You can keep your personal belongings." She stared at him. "Charles, this isn't a discussion." He stood up. "I've outgrown this marriage. I've outgrown you. I need someone who matches where I'm going, not where I came from." Maya felt something crack inside her chest. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just watched him walk toward the stairs. "I'll be sleeping in the guest room until you find somewhere else to stay." He paused at the bottom step. "And Maya, don't make this ugly. You know I'll win." He walked upstairs. Maya stood alone in the kitchen, the knife still in her hand, vegetables half-chopped on the cutting board. 12 years. 4,380 days. Double shifts at the hospital. Night classes she never finished. The promotion she turned down because he needed her home to type his briefs. The car she sold so he could afford his bar exam fees. The baby she lost at 6 months because the stress of working 3 jobs had been too much for her body. All of it. For this. She set the knife down slowly. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. Something inside her had gone still. Perfectly still. She didn't know it yet, but that stillness would become her greatest weapon. The next morning, Maya woke up at 5 a.m. Charles was still asleep in the guest room. She moved through the house like a ghost, collecting things. Not packing, documenting. She photographed the filing cabinet in his home office. the one he always kept locked. She photographed the stack of bank statements on his desk, the ones with account numbers she didn't recognize. She photographed the second phone hidden in his sock drawer, the one with a pink case. She didn't touch anything. She didn't take anything. She just recorded. Years of being invisible had taught her something valuable. People forget you're watching when they stop seeing you. Charles had stopped seeing her a long time ago. That was his first mistake. At 7 a.m., she made breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee, black, no sugar, the way he liked it. Charles came downstairs, surprised to see her functioning. He had expected tears. He had expected begging. Instead, Maya smiled and handed him his coffee. "I made your favorite." Charles took the mug, suspicious. "You're not going to fight me on this." Maya shook her head slowly. "You're right, Charles. You've outgrown me. I understand." He narrowed his eyes. "That's it." She turned back to the stove. "I'll start looking for apartments this weekend. I just need a few weeks to sort out my finances." Charles relaxed. This was easier than he expected. "Fine. You have until the end of the month." He grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. "And Maya?" She looked up. "Thanks for being reasonable about this. I knew you'd understand eventually." He walked out. Maya stood at the window, watching his Mercedes pull out of the driveway. Her expression didn't change, but inside, the gears were turning. He thought she was giving up. He thought she was accepting defeat. He had no idea that Maya Johnson had spent the last 7 years learning everything about him. His passwords, his accounts, his secrets, and most importantly, his lies. 3 days later, Maya sat in a small coffee shop downtown. Across from her sat a woman she hadn't seen in 11 years. Denise Carter, Charles's ex-girlfriend from law school. The one he swore meant nothing. The one he claimed had been crazy and obsessive. The one Maya had found crying outside their apartment building 2 months after the wedding, begging to speak to Charles. Maya had sent her away that day. She had believed her husband. She had trusted him. Now Denise sat across from her, older, sharper, with a wedding ring of her own and a manila folder in her hands. "I saw the filing," Denise said quietly. "It's public record now. Charles Johnson versus Maya Johnson. Irreconcilable differences. He's claiming you manipulated him financially." Maya nodded slowly. "He is." Denise pushed the folder across the table. "Then you need to see this." Maya opened it. Inside were bank statements. Dozens of them. All from an account she had never seen before. An account in Charles's name, with deposits totaling over $1.2 million. Maya's breath caught in her throat. "Where did you get these?" Denise's jaw tightened. "I was a paralegal at his firm for 8 months before you two got married. He didn't know I still had access to certain records. I kept copies of everything because I knew Maya. I knew he would do this to you eventually." Maya looked up. "Why are you helping me?" Denise's eyes glistened. "Because he did the same thing to me. I put him through his first 2 years. I paid his rent. I typed his papers. And when he got his internship at Morrison and Associates, he told me I wasn't sophisticated enough for the life he was building." She took a shaky breath. "I was 23. I had nothing. No proof. No support. I walked away with nothing while he built his empire on my back." She reached across the table and gripped Maya's hand. "I won't let him do that to you." Maya stared at the documents. $1.2 million. Hidden in an account she never knew existed. While she worked double shifts. While she skipped meals. While she lost their child from the stress of keeping them afloat. She closed the folder slowly. "What else do you have?" Denise smiled grimly. "Everything." Over the next 2 weeks, Maya learned things that made her sick to her stomach. Denise had kept meticulous records. Not out of spite. Out of survival. She had known Charles was dangerous the moment he discarded her. She had known that someday, someone else would need protection from him. That someone was Maya. The $1.2 million was just the beginning. Charles had been funneling money from their joint accounts into offshore holdings for over 5 years. He had used Maya's signature, forged, on loan documents that put the house entirely in his name despite her being the one who had made every mortgage payment for the first 6 years. He had taken out a life insurance policy on her worth $750,000. And 6 months ago, he had begun dating Vanessa Cole, the 26-year-old paralegal who now sat behind him in court. Their relationship had started 3 weeks before Maya's last miscarriage, a pregnancy Charles had known about and encouraged her to keep. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the emails. Denise had obtained them through a former colleague still working at Charles's firm. Emails between Charles and Vanessa. Emails where he called Maya the investment that stopped paying off. Emails where he discussed how to minimize the settlement and make her look unstable. Emails where he joked about how easy it had been to get her to sign documents without reading them. Emails where he confessed that he had never loved her, that she had been useful, that she had been a stepping stone. Maya read them all in one sitting. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just felt something cold settle into her bones. Charles thought he knew her. He thought he had married a simple woman, a quiet woman, a woman who would accept whatever he gave her and be grateful. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Maya returned home that evening as if nothing had changed. She made dinner. She cleaned the house. She even smiled when Charles came home late, smelling like Vanessa's perfume. "How was your day?" she asked softly. Charles barely looked at her. "Fine. Busy. I made pot roast. Your favorite." He hesitated. Something about her tone made him uneasy. But then he shrugged it off. This was Maya. Quiet, predictable Maya. She was probably just trying to make the transition easier for herself. "Thanks." He sat down and ate. Maya watched him from across the table. She watched the way he chewed, the way he scrolled through his phone between bites, the way he didn't look at her once. She had spent 12 years loving this man, 12 years sacrificing for him, 12 years believing he saw her. He never did. "Charles." He looked up, annoyed. "What?" "I was thinking, maybe we should try counseling. Before we finalize everything." Charles set down his fork. "Maya, I told you. This isn't a discussion. I've made my decision." She nodded slowly, letting her eyes fill with tears she had practiced in the mirror. "I know. I'm having a hard time. I don't want to lose you." Charles sighed heavily. He looked at her like she was a child asking for a toy she couldn't have. "Look, I get that this is hard for you, but you need to accept reality. We're done. I've moved on. And honestly, you should too." He stood up. "I have calls to make." He walked away without clearing his plate. Maya sat alone at the table. The tears disappeared instantly. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Denise. "He thinks I'm broken. Phase 1 complete." The reply came 30 seconds later. "Good. Now we wait." If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Let's see who's really following this story. Because trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. Over the next 3 weeks, Maya played her role perfectly. She cried when Charles expected her to cry. She begged when he expected her to beg. She signed documents his lawyers sent over without appearing to read them, though she photographed every single page first and sent them to someone Charles didn't know existed, an attorney named Patricia Okonkwo. Patricia was not like Charles. She didn't work for a prestigious downtown firm. She didn't wear Italian suits or drive a Mercedes. She worked out of a small office in Riverside, specializing in cases most lawyers wouldn't touch: domestic financial abuse, hidden asset recovery, taking down men who thought they were untouchable. Patricia had a 94% success rate, and she had been waiting for a case like Maya's for a very long time. "He's arrogant," Patricia said during their third meeting, spreading Charles's financial records across her desk. "He thinks because he's a lawyer, he knows how to hide things. But he's sloppy. Offshore accounts registered under his mother's maiden name. Amateur hour." Maya sat quietly, absorbing everything. "What do we do?" Patricia smiled. "We let him keep thinking he's winning. We let him get comfortable. We let him make mistakes. And then we take everything. Charles, meanwhile, was feeling confident. His divorce attorney, a law school friend named Kevin Mitchell, had assured him the case was airtight. Maya had no proof of the hidden accounts. The house was in his name. The investment portfolio was structured to exclude marital assets. She would walk away with nothing, just like Denise, just like all the others. He celebrated by taking Vanessa to a resort in the Bahamas for a week. They posted photos on Instagram. Him in linen shirts, her in bikinis, both of them laughing at sunset. He didn't bother to hide it. Why would he? Maya was nobody. Maya was nothing. Maya was a chapter he had already closed. He had no idea that while he was sipping cocktails on a beach, a team of forensic accountants was dismantling his financial empire piece by piece. He had no idea that Maya's attorney had already filed motions to freeze his offshore accounts pending investigation. He had no idea that 3 of his former clients were about to be contacted about irregularities in their billing records, irregularities that would trigger a state bar investigation. He had no idea that the woman he had discarded was about to become the most dangerous person in his life. Charles returned from the Bahamas with a tan and a new Rolex. Vanessa had picked it out for him, a celebration of his freedom. He walked into his office on Monday morning feeling invincible. That feeling lasted exactly 47 minutes. His assistant knocked on his door, pale-faced. "Mr. Johnson, there's a woman here to see you. She says it's urgent." Charles looked up, annoyed. "Who is it?" "She says her name is Patricia Okonkwo. She's an attorney." Charles frowned. He didn't know any Patricia Okonkwo. "Send her in." The woman who entered his office was not what he expected. She was tall, dark-skinned, with natural hair pulled back in a professional bun. She wore a simple navy suit and carried a leather briefcase that looked like it had seen 100 courtrooms. She didn't smile. She didn't extend her hand. She just sat down across from him without being invited. "Mr. Johnson, I'm here to discuss the matter of Johnson versus Johnson." Charles leaned back in his chair, trying to project authority. "You're Maya's lawyer?" "I am." He almost laughed. "With all due respect, Ms. Okonkwo, I think you should advise your client to accept my settlement offer. She's not going to win this case." Patricia tilted her head slightly. "That's interesting, because I was about to advise you of the same thing." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Are you familiar with the Bank Secrecy Act, Mr. Johnson?" Charles's smile flickered. "Of course. Then you're aware that failing to report offshore financial accounts exceeding $10,000 is a federal crime." The room went very still. "You're also aware that forging a spouse's signature on loan documents constitutes fraud." Charles's jaw tightened. "And I'm sure you know that overbilling clients by an average of $47,000 per case over a 5-year period would be of significant interest to the State Bar Ethics Committee." Charles stood up abruptly. "Get out of my office." Patricia didn't move. "I'm giving you one opportunity, Mr. Johnson. One chance to settle this quietly. Drop the divorce filing. Return the house to your wife's name. Liquidate the offshore accounts and deposit the full amount into a joint account pending equitable distribution." "You're insane." "Perhaps." She stood slowly, buttoning her jacket. "But I'm also very thorough. And I have documentation of every crime you've committed since 2018. She placed a single photograph on his desk. It was a screenshot of an email. The email he had sent to Vanessa 6 months ago. The one where he called Maya the investment that stopped paying off. Charles stared at it, his face going white. "Where did you get this?" Patricia smiled for the first time. "Your wife isn't as stupid as you thought, Mr. Johnson. She's been watching you for a very long time." She walked toward the door. "You have 72 hours to accept our terms. After that, I file everything with the court, the State Bar, and the IRS." She paused at the threshold. "Have a lovely day." The door clicked shut behind her. Charles stood alone in his office, his hands shaking. This wasn't possible. Maya couldn't have done this. Not Maya. Not as Maya. He grabbed his phone and dialed Kevin Mitchell. We have a problem. 72 hours passed. Charles didn't accept the terms. Of course he didn't. He was Charles Johnson. He didn't negotiate with people like Maya. He didn't surrender to nobodies. He would fight. He would win. He always did. 3 days later, he received a certified letter informing him that the State Bar of California had opened an ethics investigation into his billing practices. The same day, his bank called to inform him that his offshore accounts had been frozen by federal order pending investigation. The day after that, his firm's managing partner called him into a meeting and asked him to take a temporary leave of absence while certain matters were resolved. By the end of the week, Charles Johnson had lost access to 87% of his liquid assets, his partnership track, and his reputation. And the divorce case was about to go to trial. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the case. The prominent attorney who had been exposed by his own wife. The hidden millions. The forged documents. The secret girlfriend. Reporters sat in the back rows. Former colleagues watched from the gallery. Even Charles's mother had come, though she refused to look at him. Maya sat at the plaintiff's table with Patricia Okonkwo. She wore a simple black dress. No jewelry. No makeup. She looked exactly like what she was. A woman who had given everything and had everything taken from her. Except now, she was taking it back. Charles sat at the defendant's table with Kevin Mitchell, sweating through his $1,000 suit. His confidence had evaporated. The Rolex suddenly felt like a weight around his wrist. The judge entered. All rise. The trial lasted 3 days. On the first day, Patricia presented the financial records, the offshore accounts, the forged signatures, the life insurance policy taken out on Maya 6 months before Charles filed for divorce. Charles's attorney objected constantly. The judge overruled him constantly. On the second day, Patricia called witnesses. Denise Carter testified about Charles's pattern of behavior, how he had used her and discarded her, how she had spent years recovering from the psychological damage he had inflicted. 2 former clients testified about overbilling irregularities. A handwriting expert testified that Maya's signature on the loan documents was forged. Charles tried to remain composed, but his leg bounced constantly beneath the table. On the third day, Patricia called her final witness, Maya Johnson. Maya walked to the witness stand slowly. She didn't look at Charles. She didn't need to. Patricia approached her gently. Mrs. Johnson, can you tell the court how you met the defendant? Maya took a breath. I met Charles in 2011. I was working as an administrative assistant at a medical office. He was a first-year law student. He came in for a physical required by his school. What was your impression of him? He was charming, ambitious. He talked about wanting to change the world, to help people, to be someone. And you believed him? I did. Maya's voice stayed steady. He told me he came from nothing, that his family had struggled, that he just needed one person to believe in him. And you became that person? Yes. Patricia paused. Can you describe for the court the financial contributions you made to the defendant's education and career? Maya nodded slowly. I paid for his bar exam preparation course, his study materials, his first 3 years of rent. I sold my car so he could afford his exam fees. I worked double shifts at the hospital, sometimes triple, so he could focus on studying. How many hours a week were you working? 70, sometimes 80. And during this time, did the defendant contribute financially to the household? No, he was a full-time student. He didn't work. So you were the sole provider? Yes. Patricia walked toward the evidence table. Mrs. Johnson, I'm going to show you Exhibit 47. She held up a photograph. Can you tell the court what this is? Maya's eyes dropped. That's a hospital bracelet. From March 2017. What happened in March 2017? The courtroom went silent. Maya's voice cracked for the first time. I was 6 months pregnant. I had been working 3 jobs to pay for Charles's final semester. The stress, my body couldn't handle it. She paused. I lost the baby. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Charles looked down at the table. And after you lost the baby, what did the defendant say to you? Maya's jaw tightened. He said it was probably for the best, that we weren't ready for children, that it would have slowed him down. Patricia let the silence hang. Mrs. Johnson, after everything you gave, your money, your health, your child, what did you expect from this marriage? Maya looked up. Her eyes were dry now. I expected a partner. I expected someone who would remember where he came from. I expected someone who would value the sacrifices I made. And what did you receive instead? Maya finally turned and looked at Charles, directly at him. Betrayal. The word hung in the air like smoke. Charles couldn't meet her eyes. Patricia's closing argument lasted 45 minutes. She laid out every piece of evidence, every forged document, every hidden account, every lie. She spoke about patterns of financial abuse, about men who use women as stepping stones and then discard them when they reach the top. She spoke about Maya, not as a victim, but as a survivor, a woman who had given everything and had been told she was nothing, a woman who had believed in someone who never believed in her, a woman who had finally decided to stop being invisible. When Patricia finished, the courtroom was silent. Kevin Mitchell's closing argument lasted 12 minutes. It was hollow. Everyone knew it. The judge returned with a verdict in less than 2 hours. In the matter of Johnson versus Johnson, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Maya Johnson. Charles's face went pale. The defendant's claims of financial manipulation are dismissed with prejudice. The evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that the plaintiff was the primary financial contributor to the marital estate for the majority of the marriage. The judge paused. Furthermore, the defendant's actions, including forging the plaintiff's signature on loan documents, concealing marital assets in offshore accounts, and taking out a life insurance policy on the plaintiff without her knowledge, constitute a pattern of financial abuse and fraud. Charles's hands were shaking. The court hereby orders the following. All offshore accounts held by the defendant shall be liquidated and the full value transferred to the plaintiff. The marital home shall be awarded to the plaintiff. The defendant shall pay the plaintiff's legal fees in full, along with compensatory damages in the amount of $750,000 for emotional distress and financial harm. Kevin Mitchell objected weakly. The judge ignored him. Additionally, this court is referring the matter of the forged documents to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. The defendant is hereby ordered to surrender his passport pending the outcome of that investigation. Charles stood up. Your Honor, this is... Sit down, Mr. Johnson. The judge's voice was ice. You spent 12 years taking from a woman who gave you everything. You lied to her. You stole from her. You used her as a tool for your own advancement and then discarded her like she was worthless. The judge removed her glasses. This court sees you, Mr. Johnson. This court sees exactly what you are. And this court will not allow you to escape the consequences of your actions. She slammed the gavel. Court is adjourned. Maya walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sunlight. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. She didn't stop. She walked straight to the parking lot, where Denise Carter was waiting beside a black sedan. How do you feel? Denise asked. Maya paused. She looked back at the courthouse. Charles was being escorted out a side door by his attorney, avoiding the media, his head down, his shoulders slumped. The man who had told her she wasn't sophisticated enough. The man who had called her an investment that stopped paying off. The man who had thought he was untouchable. Maya turned back to Denise. I feel nothing. She got into the car. 3 months later, Maya stood on the balcony of her home, the home she now owned outright, watching the sun set over Westfield Heights. Charles had pleaded guilty to forgery charges to avoid a trial. He had lost his law license, his partnership, His reputation. Vanessa had left him 2 weeks after the verdict. His mother had stopped speaking to him. He was living in a studio apartment in Riverside, working as a paralegal at a personal injury firm that took cases no one else wanted. Maya had received updates from Patricia. She didn't ask for them. She didn't need them. She had moved on. The $1.2 million from the offshore accounts had been used to start a foundation. A foundation that provided legal aid and financial counseling to women escaping financially abusive relationships. She had named it after the baby she had lost, Grace. The Grace Foundation had already helped 47 women in its first 3 months of operation. 47 women who had been told they were worthless. 47 women who had been used and discarded. 47 women who had found their way back to themselves. Maya took a sip of her tea and watched the last rays of sunlight disappear below the horizon. She didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel victorious. She just felt free. For the first time in 12 years, she was exactly who she was supposed to be. Not Charles's wife. Not Charles's victim. Just Maya. And that was more than enough. 6 months after that, Maya received a letter. It was from Charles. She recognized his handwriting immediately. She held the envelope for a long moment, considering. Then she walked to the fireplace, dropped it into the flames unopened, and watched it burn. Some chapters don't deserve to be read. Some people don't deserve closure. Some stories end not with a bang, but with silence. And silence, Maya had learned, was the most powerful sound of all. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please subscribe now. Because every week, we bring you stories about people who refused to stay down. People who rose. People who won. Not by screaming. Not by begging. But by being exactly who they were always meant to be. Until next time.